Welcome to Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. I am Juliette Hahn here with my co-host Brent Sopel. How are you doing?
I'm alive.
Okay, so we're going to preface, that's the correct word, right? I just got back from Chicago. You just put on an epic, the Sopel Foundation just put on like an incredible special event. And so we want to thank the sponsors. There's a bunch of stuff that we want to do on this, but then we want to kind of break it down because of the feedback. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Every event that you've put on is like, I leave buzzing, like skipping, like, oh my God, this is amazing. But just take us through a little bit, the background of what this weekend was and how it unfolded.
Yeah. It's called, Hockey with the Stars. Obviously the first annual. I had Garewood Securities, which is, a big sponsor of the foundation, pitched this idea to me of, creating some hockey teams and bringing pros in and, adding 2 or 3 pros to the game. And everybody understands, they've seen the police fire, they play hockey games. And so we tried to mimic that with union workers. We talk about working with our hands. So, in unions, we probably got, in my mind, probably 30 to 40% of them are dyslexic, right?
Oh,
probably the highest,
totally.
Field of dyslexics out of, anything. So, because we always talk about trades, right? So it was 60 union workers, from sprinkler fitters to pipe plumbers to electricians to carpenters. So the idea was to try and get each union to put a team together. It ended up being too short of notice. Next year we're going to try and play, maybe 8 or 10 teams, and each union will have their own team. And you'll play for tournaments, add 2 or 3 pros to each one, and then have a championship belt. That was the goal. Something that we could grow, something different than anybody else. I always like to do things different than everybody else. But there's no more community that's more impacted, with the 5 Ds than trades.
Mm-hmm. It was, and so I'm just going to set up a little bit. I mean, I'm going to do what you don't love, but the details that you put together for these to make everyone feel so special is remarkable. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me that like you are so detail oriented, even though you would probably not say that about yourself. The little things and how special you made everyone feel from the sponsors, which, you guys go follow Sopel Foundation on Instagram, or, you follow Brent's which is Brent.Sopel, and you can kind of see some of the stuff we're doing stories. We'll be doing posts on this, but everyone felt special down to the players. I mean, they had their own jerseys. I had my own jersey, by the way. Number 37 I found all my field hockey pictures. That was my number in high school. That you hung on in the lockers with a special bag. You had the tape, you had all waters and Gatorades. I mean, down to the last detail. These guys came in with their bags and, where do we go? Oh, here's the list. What team are you on? Go to your, your locker. And they're like, oh, everything's in there. Don't worry about it. They were like, this is so cool. To the families that were there, there was a period of time when I was working the merchandise table, and just the feedback from the people, we want to support, but this merchandise is so incredible, down to the details of the softness of the fabric. I mean, it's like the best. And the feeling, the food trucks, the bouncy houses, little kids were sleeping and they were there until after 10 o'clock. Like, it was just every single person was smiling, was happy, and was excited to be there, and learned a little bit more about dyslexia, because some of these people didn't realize what dyslexia was, right? They came for the day, because it was a whole day, come watch hockey, get some sign autographs. It just was incredible. To the national anthem singing, say his name, because I'm going to say it wrong, and Chicago people.
Jim Cornelius. So he does all the Blackhawk games, Bears games, Indy 500. So he's world renowned. So we were able to get him to come sing the national anthem, which Today's Elizabeth's mom's birthday, and she was more excited about having him and seeing him, and so that was pretty cool.
It was so cool. And then the guys were so freaking happy. I mean, I think it was one of the teams with the plumbers. I want to say he was 75.
Yeah, there was a couple. I remember, Jim Coyne, who, big shout out, the head of the plumbers, who's a big sponsor of this, and he was saying, I think it's the two brothers, or like in the late 60s or 70s that were out playing. It was, but that's my goal, is everybody who comes to my events feels special.
And
That's that is my number one goal at all times, because if you can do that, and then you're ahead of most people and most organizations. And to me, it's those details are what make people feel special. And that's the softness of the merchandise, that's important. Elizabeth, talk about a lot and focus on a lot is, and for you guys, for women, like women's cuts, right? Everybody just goes and
my
buys
cropped hoodie. Yeah.
Like that's important to us, because that's a detail nobody else is focus on, and makes people feel special in events. Somebody they just put a $10 t-shirt, and who's going to wear it? No, we want people to wear it and be proud of it. And so those women's cuts, and took me a little while to figure out what the tags were, but that that is important for us. We're always going to have those two things, because you guys are different than us, and that's what we are. We're all different, but we're we are all important.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, just some of the feedback, first of all, on social media, the people tagging and sharing, just excited to have their kids come watch their, some of these guys that maybe are in men's league, maybe or not. There was one guy that hasn't played in, I think, 12 years. And I was like, I think it's like riding a bike, right? Like, and he's like, yeah, but I'm going to be so sore.
I had a lot of people icing their bodies when I talked to them yesterday. There's guys that play here and there. There's some guys that haven't played in years. But that's what it was about. It was to get everybody together, have fun, feel special, have some pros out there. You really feel, guys always think they're good to get on the ice with some of us, and it's a changer, but it's
right.
The championship belt, but it's to grow something, do something a little bit different than what you see normally. And I always like to do things different.
Mm-hmm. But that's what's so special. I mean, that is. And then some of the emails. I mean, you shared an email yesterday, and we'll just touch on it, but keep it anonymous. Do you want to?
Yeah, I know. It's.
I mean, I was in tears. Because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's the tangible that I always talk about. People, corporations, they want to see statistics or things like that. What I always say, relatability
and understanding.
And understanding, and I'll kind of read it. A few lines. Obviously, so last night my husband played in the Hockey with the Stars tournament. My daughter was also a hockey player, and she watched her dad play a game she loves with people she considers heroes for a cause that she still doesn't understand, but touches her directly. It was like tension inside of her released. She said, "I'm getting a shirt because I will be so cool to show up to my evaluation wearing it." It was the first time I've seen any positivity from her surrounding dyslexia or processing disorder. I'm sure you don't get these emails.
She said, "I'm sure you get these emails all the time." Yeah. So I'm still crying again.
Yeah.
Well, and just working the table a couple of times, and having to do the calculations.
When Rick was buying, I saw you sweating.
Oh, I was like, oh my God. But there was a couple kids that, as their parents were doing it, I was like, you got to give me a second. I was like, I'm, dyscalculia. And I was like, I'm, not really good at math. We all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses. And there was a couple kids that went, "Wait, it's hard for you too?" And I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "It is really hard." I said, "I also, I have dyslexia too." And they were like, just literally, as a kid, just staring with their mouth open, like, oh, I have it too. And their parent like looked at them like, okay, they never say it out loud, right?
Mhm.
They never say it, but it was okay. And that's what the foundation's about. It's okay that we learn different. It's not the stamp, it's not this, it is okay. And we, of course, everyone knows that I make plane friends.
Jesus.
I knew that was your next words. Oh, Jesus. I met this gentleman. We were delayed 7 hours leaving, but I know, but I have to say I can't complain because I was in the American lounge, and that's why I like to fly American out of LaGuardia, and kind of just had snacks and sat and did work. So I can't complain about it. But the guy next to me, when we sat on the airplane, he was like, I've been here since 8. And, he wasn't as happy. He was definitely not in the lounge. So he was a little bit more grumpy. And as I said, I don't start the conversations, even though I know no one, even Dan's like, there's no way. And I'm like, I swear.
I back down on this one.
No, I will bet my life on it. I really don't. I am very aware of when to talk and when not to talk. I shut up. I am. And I never, it might be like, hi, like when they sit down or whatever, it might be an acknowledgement, but it's usually them starting the conversation. And he shared with me, I know, just keep making the faces. We're just, if you're watching YouTube, you can see his faces. I want to next time film when I'm just sitting there so you can see.
Please.
I'm going to go live. I'm going to go live.
Okay, stalker.
So he had a son, or he has a son that's older, but like 35, and went to, I'm going to not share the school, but went to a school in New York because he had a processing thing. This was years before they put a label.
Big school, big name school in New York.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't share this with you because I was like, this will rile you up. He said, that they don't take everyone. They only take kids that they know they can teach. And I said, yeah, I'm very aware of that. He's like, he's like, but he's not dyslexic. And then he shared a couple, he's like, he couldn't decode. And I was like, okay, I think he's dyslexic, but we'll just leave it at that. Yeah. So he said to me, it's really remarkable. Now, this is before I shared that I had dyslexia. But I was saying I was going to Chicago for this event. And he said, it was remarkable to me, going into the classrooms, everyone was like normal. They were like normal people. They just, they might like learn different or not do well in school, but they're really normal. And we had already been talking probably for like 15 minutes. And I said, yes, I said, it's how we learn. And then I said,
I don't know if anybody called me normal, so this should be square.
Right. That's just that word. But I said, I said I have 4 of the 5 Ds. I said, I really struggle. And he was like, wait, what? He goes, but you could speak so well. And then he went, I'm really sorry that because he was an investment banker. He goes, I'm really sorry. He's like, I'm just so thrown off. He goes, wait, can you tell me more? And then we really got into like talking, and he's like, so you're the chief communications officer for a biotech company, but you have, and I said, yes, but I'm really good at my job because of all the struggles, because of also all my strengths, because of my struggles. But there's things that are still really hard. When I get like a 15-page email, like I could breathe right now. Like that's really, really hard for me. It takes me a really long time, but there's understanding in my organization. There's understanding, and that's what it is. And that's what the Sobel Foundation is doing. It's about giving the resources, which we are, continuing to roll out. But it's to create the awareness to show everyone you're not alone. And it's about the self-esteem.
Yeah.
And you're seen and heard. We see you. We know what you go through every day. We understand. And it's hard, but we understand.
Self-esteem is probably the hardest thing in the world to have and keep. Then times that by 10 for us. So if we can start with that and we can get that to a place, and I think Saturday proved it with some of the kids, the way they walked into it, and like they are there with their people.
Mm-hmm. And
they weren't alone. Didn't matter where you came from and what neighborhood or which country, or we go. It was obviously it was stressful.
I mean, but you go so above and beyond for those details that yes, it's going to be stressful because it's so important for you to make sure everyone feels the love that you put the pressure on yourself.
It's obviously we're trying to grow something in a different way than anybody else, right? Just as he said right now, your little plane friend, you guys, everybody look normal. Like they don't. It's what's inside of us, right? And some of us hide it. And it hasn't been, dyslexia hasn't been around 100 years. We haven't done it, right? So we're trying to do something that's never been done before in a way it's never been done. So, details matter. The love that was in that, the building, start to finish, and the people that stayed, and like you said, there's how many babies are sleeping, at the end of the night, but people were there for the long haul, and we didn't know how many people would be there and how many people would stay, how it would go, and there's always the stands are always full,
Packed.
yeah, yeah.
Packed.
The food trucks didn't ran out of food because they didn't expect that many people.
The tacos were so good. I stood in line for 25 minutes because I was like, I need the tacos. The food trucks were incredible.
Bouncy houses. The kids had a great time, and I'm sure they all slept well. Saturday night, but those are the details, that are important to me because those are the ones that were missed in my life, right? Those are the ones that you build blocks one at a time, right? Everybody goes, 1, 2, you grow up quicker than, 1 to 10, right? Everybody wants that big home run, that big investment, that big, maybe happens, I want to win the lottery. How many people are winning the lottery? But if I'm winning, $1,000, every time, you're getting ahead. It's small victories add up quicker than looking for that big one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why those details, obviously are important, to us, that merchandise, Eric hates me, I show up there, I'm in his face, because it is important that somebody puts it on and says, oh, it's so soft,
So
right?
soft.
Right. They're going to wear it again. It's not going to get thrown at the bottom of the closet. Right. So the foundation's spending that money, to have that, have them obviously enjoy wearing it, but that puts the foundation out there, instead of spending that money and putting it at the bottom of the closet, then, that's wasted money. Well, why do that? So it's taking a little bit of a different approach, but the first one's not successful. We can't have number 2.
And number 2 is coming. So it is going to be here. So can you take us through a little bit? There was 4 teams, and take us through the sponsors of the 4 teams and a little background on them.
Yeah, obviously, the Plumbers Union was a head sponsor with the St. Patrick's Day Parade here in Chicago. Then the 4 teams, we had team sponsors. Norman Construction, Garwood, Swallow, Mam Construction. Those are the 4 teams. So it wasn't team 1, team 2. It was, Garwood, it was Swallow. So on their jersey, got their name, and that was their team with their logo on merchandise. And each jersey had a different color. They had socks and their names on the jersey, and feel like a pro for the take that jersey home. And that was they were able to. It was their team, but obviously it was union workers that were able to play. And we had some food truck sponsors, and Keith and Annie and Jax, and the Carpenters Union, sprinkler fitters. So shoot the puck. So it was great to have some of these sponsors behind you. You can't do anything without them. But obviously there's some union heads. There's some other guys that are part of it. It was just it was a pretty cool event. A lot goes into these events. People think it's easy. We ended up probably order about 95 jerseys.
And you had to keep them all organized and make sure the names and the colors of the teams. And the guys that stay on the teams. I mean,
There's a few traded, and I got some jerseys showing up that one day too late, so I got to deal with that today. But
there was not many of those. Like it was like what, three? Yeah. Out of all the people.
Yeah. So it was. It could have been a lot worse. I was panicking about jerseys because if they didn't show up.
Yeah, and that has to be like, if you think about it, the stress of that in itself, like just makes me like, yeah. I mean, that's why. But you handle it so freaking well. I mean,
I don't know if Elizabeth would say that.
Right. I know, right? Behind the scenes, like you might be grumpy, you might be doing this and that, but understandable. I mean, you're doing the majority of this yourself.
It's you try and build something. I've always said you got to walk before you run, right? You're trying to do something different, something that's never been done before. If you miss parts, if people are upset, if they don't feel special, they're not coming back, because 100%. The embarrassment that is wrapped around, for us, there's nothing else that has more embarrassment. Your little plane friend said, you guys all look, normal, right?
You seem normal.
You all seem normal, right? Obviously you talk about the visual purposes. You can see, somebody in a wheelchair, or somebody, with crutches, or somebody with one leg. You can see that, right? You can visually see that. You can visually put yourself into their shoes, right? You can't for us. And that's,
it's invisible.
That's the invisible, torture. We get told, you're smart, right? You're stupid, you're late, right? And we're trying so hard, and there's no understanding, no relatability. And that event was all about relatability. It's something that I talk about all the time, and speaks for that email, right? Didn't even know, girl.
I know.
She just knew, right? And everybody always like, hey, how'd you, I talk dyslexic to another dyslexic. It's that relatability. And right there is the number one reason why, education system is the way it is, right? It's special ed. You got people that don't have this telling us what to do. And there's the number one. I can sit in a room. I can change the education system. I can have conversations with all these kids and keep kids in school because of relatability. It's the people that don't have the relatability are sitting there telling us what to do. And that's why this is so important to build it, the right way, to be able to take down those people.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk more about that on another episode, because I want to leave this for the events. Let's talk really quickly. People can go to the website now under events. You can sign up and send and share and do whatever for the golf event, which is September 15th, 16th. What is it?
Yeah. So there'll be photos. Yeah. I think over 7,000 photos were taken by a photographer.
Oh yeah. Last night. Yeah.
Drones, videographers. So, all that stuff will be put together, and we'll be putting, things up there, reels, or, once we get all the images together. So
you can follow along and see, right.
With, all you guys' photos, Elizabeth's, like, we have thousands. So we'll get through that. And then, next is September 15th is a golf event. And, I already had text messages, Friday or before that. So now I got to go back and, start planning. I had one last night planning that event, and
moving.
I was, and moving, and then October, the cup dinner, and, packing and moving, and,
life is busy. It's better than being bored.
My body's never hurt this much in my life.
I mean, you were running around like lifting, and so keep kind of following. You guys can see, but if you want to be a part of any of this, the golf event is the one that's coming up. We have sponsors. There's tons of whole sponsors. There's a lot of really fun things. We'll talk more about that on another episode, but you can go to the sopelfoundation.org and get all that information. Thank you again for joining Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. You guys know what I say every single time: like, rate, review, and share. You don't know who's local in the community who this event would have impacted. Like, that email says everything. The happy and the smiles of every single person that was at that event is something you want to be a part of. So like, rate, review, and share, and we'll see you for another episode of Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed.